Good afternoon. My name is Seth Limbaugh, and I'm with the Rutherford County Library System, and I'm here to teach you a class on lighting, one of our film basics classes. This course will be split up into two different segments. We're going to first talk about, we're going to first talk about lighting in terms of hardware and equipment and kind of what is used for that, and then at the end of this we're going to talk a little bit about software and color correction and how they achieve that. Originally the plan was to show you all some practical stuff and kind of go out in the field and do this more hands-on, but unfortunately due to COVID restrictions that's not possible, so we're going to be using screenshots from films, and I'm going to kind of be talking about how they achieved the effect in each one and go over different types of lighting that way. So first up in our list we have natural lighting. Natural lighting is exactly what it sounds. It's lighting used to make it look like, or used to achieve lighting that appears very natural. We've got this scene here, and this is done, there's different ways to achieve this. So this scene here was clearly they're using the light on location. The sun's up there coming down, the sun's creating light bouncing off of her forehead there. You see the light bouncing off the trees, so the sun's back there somewhere achieving that. However, there's also additional elements at play in terms of hardware and things like that. There's also people standing over here are holding what it's called bounce boards or flags, and these are used to they're these reflective surfaces that they're holding down, and they're facing upward towards the actors to bounce light back up on them, so that way there's not harsh shadows. It's creating some more light going up towards the actors. There's also very likely over the top of their heads to not have them be too bright. Someone's probably holding flags or diffusion paper up over their heads, which diffusion will cut the amount of light that's coming in, so it's like a black mesh almost that's like coming down and kind of cutting out the light, or like wax, almost wax paper, depending on what they're using in this scene. And so with those elements all combined together, you get this nice warm sun coming in, and it looks completely natural, even though there's several artificial elements at play still. Natural lighting is important in film. Several elements are that you have to be aware of if you're trying to get natural lighting. You want to make sure that when you're on location, you know which way the sun is going to be sitting and positioned for your scene, because you can't move the sun. You've got to move your actors and your entire production, so you've got to know where the sun is, and also you got to know what time of day the sun's going to be where. There's such a thing called magic hour, which is like sunset and sunrise when everything is golden, and if you want that effect, you can only shoot for a couple hours, maybe an hour tops sometimes, during that time of day. So yeah. The next one we got is a key light. A key light is the brightest light in the frame. It is the light that's illuminating usually the primary actor. It is the primary light in a three-point setup, which we'll get to here in just a few minutes. But yeah, so it's a light that's just probably sitting off here, hitting him in the face right here. So this is the key light illuminating his face there. There is some backlight and other stuff at play, but the key light is the focus here. You don't want the key light too close to your subject, because if your key light is too close, it'll make them too bright and they'll blow out the frame. And if you have it too far back, you won't be able to see any shadows. So you've kind of got to find this perfect middle point, so that way your subject doesn't appear flat or anything, but you can still see some dynamics to it. On that, there's such a thing called a high key. That is the key light being very bright. It reduces the lighting ratio in the scene. So whereas this prior scene, it's bright here, dark over here. High key, there's not a lot of difference there. It's usually used to create upbeat, well, like optimistic fantasy, things like that, feelings in film and production. You use a lot of fill lights for this. You use diffusion in certain areas so there's probably diffusion over her head to not have her blow out so much, because everything is so bright in the back. So this is an example of a high key light. then we got low key light. It does the exact opposite of the high key light. It emphasizes the dark tones, and it creates suspenseful moods, dark tones, dark moods, things like that. It's one light and a few bounce for fills. So you see, there's one light coming in, hitting them, and then there's probably some bounce card. There's a bounce card probably right down here to get that little glow on the side of his face, and so there's there's only one light kind of coming in, and that's low key light. So we've got just a normal fill, like a normal key light, high key, low key. If that makes any sense for the key lighting. Next, we've got the fill lighting. The fill is, so this is a good, so this was already, I found this image, I found this image which kind of describes the 3-point setup. So the key light's the brightest light that's hitting the actor. We've already talked about that. There's a backlight that's kind of illuminating the background and separating the background from the subject. And then the fill light is a smaller light that kind of cancels out shadows. It can highlight things, but most of the time it just cancels shadows out. It's a smaller source. It's you always place it opposite of your key light, and you always want your fill light to be less powerful than your key light. But it's just used to kind of fill in some darkened areas, and so that's what we've got going on right here. So that is the example of your fill light. Next, we've got backlighting. So now, we kind of talked briefly about the backlight in the last one. So this is the backlight. So the backlight is illuminating the back of the subject, and it's used to separate the actor or an object from your background. It adds dimension to your frame so that you don't feel so two-dimensional. It adds depth to your shot. This one's exaggerated by the smoke in the background here, but it's a good exaggeration because you've now got this light that's kind of separating him from that character back there. Let's see. Oh, also, if it's placed at an angle behind the actor and object, it is called a kicker light. So if you ever hear it referred to that's as well. But this is also part of the 3-point light system. Let's see. Where did we get? Where's 3 points? Okay. So yeah. So now that we've talked about them, we'll talk about your 3-point light system. So now that we've talked about each one of those lights, so your camera would be here. And also, I borrowed this image from No Film School. They are a great website for production. So shout out to them. So you've got your camera here. You've got your key light, which is your primary light source of the scene. It's most intense and direct. So we've talked about that. So that's your primary light hitting your actor here. Your fill light is hitting right over here, and your backlight, which is separating them out. This is kind of what that setup would look like, and we kind of can see it here. So key light hitting here, fill light here, backlight separating him from that curtain. So that is how that works. So we're going to move on to some other types of lighting. All right, this next one is practical lighting. Practical lighting is exactly what it sounds like. It is lighting that is practical, meaning that it's real and used in the scene. So these glowing orbs here are lit up. That's real lighting that you can see on film, on camera, and it's creating that real light. It's not a trick coming from off screen. It's a light that's actually hitting the actor. It's not an illusion. So this entire scene is lit with all practicals. There's all these Christmas lights and stuff filling the entire scene, and then all of the extras and people in the back also have these orb lights, which are illuminating them. And then you've got your primary actor in the front with his directly there, and it is illuminating him. There's no tricks to this. This is just all purely practical. Practical lights give depth to a scene. They create realism. You can make use of anything that gives off light: torches, fire, light bulbs, candles, television sets, things like that, computer screens. All of that can be used as practical lighting. Um, so now there's some tricks to practical lighting. There's some hardware you can buy which are called dimmers. You can get them at, I get them at Harbor Freight. And you can essentially plug your light into the dimmer, and you've got a switch, a dial that you can use to adjust the brightness. So you can take any everyday lamp or any everyday light that you have that's not like, it doesn't have to be some expensive film light. If you're working on a budget, any light will work. Your lamp or whatever, buy this little $30 dimmer pack or something like that, and now you can adjust the brightness to give you the exact level that you want. You can also, if you would like to, hide a light to give it some extra oomph. If you do want to hide like a motivated light off a little bit to give it some extra push, you can do that. That is a way to do that as well. And then also you can use different bulbs, different colored bulbs, different soft bulbs, LED bulbs. There's different brightnesses, color temperatures to each light bulb out there. So just play around, experiment, find ones that give you the tones that work for you and work for the scene that you're trying to create. The next thing we got is hard lighting. Hard lighting creates dramatic effect. It has shadows, silhouettes, things like that, and it'll draw attention to the frame. So as you can see here, like the lighting is very harsh and dramatic on their faces up here. There's dark shadows in the back happening, so your eyes direct towards these two characters in a dramatic way. You're not looking at the background as much. Your eyes are focused here and maybe even a little bit here, but primarily here. And now this is achieved by using kind of all of the aspects, kind of using the 3-point system that we talked about before. So we've got a key light over here coming in and hitting him here, a fill light here, and then a backlight that's coming in and probably hitting right here. They're also using flags. So flags are used to put on a light, and you put it to kind of block where the light goes. So they probably have a light up here kind of coming down, and they've got it flagged off so that it creates this harsh line, this shadow right here, to prevent you from going any further there. So that is an example of hard lighting. So now we got soft lighting. Soft lighting is a more tender light style. It is used for exactly what it says. It's used for softer scenes, emotional scenes, things like that. It makes things look more whimsical, almost, and you reduce shadows. The biggest thing that you want is you don't want many shadows with soft lighting, and that's what they've done here. They've used a large light source, probably a big orb, or they're just out. This one's out on the beach, so this is natural lighting. And it's just kind of washed the whole scene with light. And then they've even got bounce cards underneath him to get rid of any shadow under his chin, anything like that. It's all of it is just very almost one light source, one tone to it. There's a lot of diffusion probably being used here, because if this was a very bright sun, this would come off harshly, so they've probably got a big mesh diffuser sitting up here that's kind of chopping out the sun and evening it out a little bit. So that's also what's probably happening in this scene. But yeah, so that is your example of soft lighting. So now we got bounce lighting. Bounce lighting is used to create a larger area of an evenly spread light. It can bolster any kind of film lighting and highlights the subject without shining directly on them. I was reading that off some notes. This is a good example of all of that. So you've got this huge light, this huge wash of light that's coming down here, and then they're bouncing that light directly over at the actor there to create this one single light source that's just filled out the whole scene. So that's so this is called a whiteboard here, a white card, and then you point and you just shine everything directly at the actors, and that kind of washes out the whole scene and creates this big overall glowing effect that you get. And yeah, so that is called bounce lighting. Now we've got side lighting. It provides drama or mood lighting, and can help with contrast. So you've got a big light coming in from the side of the actor, hitting him right here, and that's the side lighting. Whoops, sorry, lost my spot in my notes. So side lighting. This is an example of some diffuse side lighting. So they've got a fill still coming into the side a little bit, or they still have some light bounced back on here. If they didn't do that, it would be a harsh line drawn. There'd be shadows over here and nothing like that. But because we've got this practical and probably a bounce card here, it's filled it in a little bit. But the primary light source is off to the side, and that is what the definition of side lighting is to have that light source off to the side. And you can even see the light right here, like that's the light being bounced, because you see that door's open and angled a little bit, so you know the light's over here because you can see the reflection of the light off of that doorknob right there, and that's a little, so that's that. So you can see exactly where that side light is coming in from. And so yeah, this is side lighting. Now we've got motivated lighting. This is kind of one of my favorite lighting. It's very stylized. It enhances practical lights. It imitates natural light sources or lamps. We talked about this earlier about like in the scene where we talked about it in this one. So we talked about how maybe there's a motivated light hidden underneath the table shining up at the actor to give him just a little bit of an extra glow. So motivated light, like this lamppost here, is not creating this shadow of this man. Your eyes are thinking that it is, but like there's no way that light is powerful enough to actually create that silhouette. So they've got the practical light turned on and everything, but then over in this window, I'm going to assume, or maybe even past the trees back here, there's a very, very big focused light that's coming down and hitting him directly. So that creates that shadow. So it's a hidden light that's used to imitate a practical or a natural light source. So it's a well hidden light. I think it's the window. It really looks like it's coming from that window. But it's a hidden light used to create that. It's very likely using flags or filters to focus that and scope it in so it doesn't flood the whole scene. Like you can see how it's very focused right there. So it's probably very flagged in to where it's cut off and everything as well. And the last one we got is ambient lighting. Ambient lighting helps provide the overall light, but can also alter controlled light if not handled correctly. It's light that's already present in the location is what ambient light is. So if you're on a street and the street lights are on, that's ambient light. If the moon's out and it's bright enough, that's ambient light. You want to make sure that you're considering the time of day whenever you're going out and you're shooting, that the ambient light around you is going to work with what you've got if you don't have control over it. If you're shooting in a public area where the street lights are on timers, you've got to know what the timers are set to and how that's going to go. So that's kind of the definition of an ambient light. So now we're going to kind of talk about we'll get into it in a second. We're just going to kind of review everything. So now we're going to kind of go back through everything that we've learned today and look over everything once more now that you know all of the different things. So we've got natural lighting, which again is used to replicates real light. We've got a key light, which is the primary light focused in on the scene right here. A high key, which is used to reduces the lighting ratio of light to dark in the scene. It's that hopeful, optimistic look. You've got low key, which is very direct and shadowed. It's shadow focused. You've got your fill lighting, which is kind of coming in off to the side and kind of fills in the places of an actor's face or body that like is getting some shadows on it from the key and backlight, and just kind of adding in that bit. Combining those three types of lights together, you have your 3-point light system, which is your typical setup in film. We've got backlighting. Oops, did I already go over? Oh yeah, and backlighting. Sorry, I forgot to do. I jumped ahead of myself. Backlighting, the light in the background that separates the actor from the background or the object. Then you got practical lighting, which would be a light that appears to be giving off, or a prop or a set piece that appears to be giving off light towards an actor or a subject. Hard lighting, which is that dramatic look that we've got kind of framing this scene here with harsh shadows in the background things are cut off in very deliberate shadows. We got soft lighting, which is just a very warm feeling, low shadows, diffusion across it, just this very warm but low contrast tone. Then we got bounce lighting, which is lots of light, white cards bouncing everything off to create this very white and like very bright scene. And we got side lighting, which is the primary light is off to the side of the actor and hitting, kind of splitting the difference, or splitting them in half almost. Without backlighting and the fill light, it would create a harsh two-face almost look. And with those lights, it just adds this dramatic feel and emotional feel to it. And then we have motivated light. Again, this light here is not providing enough to actually create that silhouette, so there's a hidden motivated light to make it look like this light is doing that effect, probably in that window there. And then ambient light, the moon, street lights, things like that, lights you don't have control over in your scene that are creating lighting effects for you. So, next up on our list, we're going to talk a little bit about what they would use for editing. So, give me just 1 second. Alright, and we are back. So, now we're going to talk a little bit about color correction and how that works. Now, I've kind of moved the screen so that you can see some of the important stuff, but you're not able to see the whole workstation. I did that so that way you could still see me as well while I'm talking to you about this. So we're going to take some of these images and do some color correction on them just to change their looks and their styles a little bit. Now, of course, it would be nice, but I don't have any raw footage with me to kind of do like a before and after of some uncolor corrected stuff, because of course all of these screenshots, things have already been color corrected. They've already been like they're already set to the feel of the film that the director and the cinematographer wanted it to look like and the editor wanted it to look like. But we're just going to change it up, and I'll kind of show you what that does. So we are currently using Adobe Premiere Pro for this. There's other software that you can use, After Effects, things like that. I use Adobe Premiere as it is kind of the easiest for me to use. Also for look and feels, there's a lot of templates and stuff out there, and a lot of other add-ons that give you different looks and feels. One of my favorites is called Magic Bullet. It's one of my favorite ones. We're going to get into some basic color corrections. Let's find one of these images that we can really do something with. Some of these images do not import properly. That's okay. We don't need to do it to all of them. We'll start with this Captain America scene. So, your number one thing you want to do is you want a white balance. So you want to click a white balance selector, and you want to click something that is meant to be white, like that's meant to be pure white on the screen. For example, this is down here. Click that. Now, if it changed the temperature by negative 1.3, so it did just a little bit, but of course it's already been color corrected, so it did not do it right. Let me see what happens if I do this. So so there we go. So let's say that the image was filmed and this is kind of what it looked like to begin with. So let's say this was your raw footage here. They filmed it with really warm lights, and you're looking at it and you're like, this moment does not need to look this warm. We need it to look better. We need white to be true white. So you'll grab your white balance selector, you click where it's supposed to be true white, and then there we go. Now it changed it back to that being true white, and everything else adjusts around that. Then you would adjust your exposure here, so you can go up and down with that. Your contrast, so if you want to make some of those shadows come across harsher, you can bring the contrast down. So now the contrast is way up, and all of these shadows in the darks are way darker, and the lights are way lighter. Highlights bring up the warm tones in the scene, so you've got that. And then shadows, you can make the shadows darker or brighter to adjust them. Same thing with the whites. This will bring your whites up and down, and the blacks, that'll bring your blacks, true blacks, up and down. I leave those usually as they are. And yeah, so you can kind of use this to have some creative control over your scene. There's also an auto button in Adobe Premiere that will automatically do it for you. It thinks this is what the scene should look like. It is wrong most of the time, so I do not suggest using auto. But it is a place. Sometimes you can use auto to get a starting point and go from there. You can also select your input for your camera if you have it, but most people do not have this, so I would ignore that as well. So this is your basic correction. There's a creative block, so we'll turn off basic corrections. Now we're back to normal. There's a creative block, and now this block gives you some predetermined looks. You can select, so this is a monochrome Kodak 520, so this turns the whole scene into a monochrome scene, black and white. There's these Kodak looks that kind of give it this more older feel to it. These Fuji Eternas, they warm it up a little bit. And you can kind of go through and play with some of these different looks. See what you like. Here's the Western. Yeah, so the Western gives it these brown tones, and you can increase the intensity there. That's really Western. 200% intensity. That is a Captain America Western film if I have ever seen one. You can do film fades if you want it to look like the film is old and not. You can do that. You can sharpen it. That really gives it some harsh tones. The vibrance all the way up makes it, well, of course we're in Western mode, but like you bring all the vibrance all the way down, that kind of takes away everything. And saturation, that's the intensity of the colors. So now that blue is really popping out over these gold tones here. And then you can select the tints of your shadows. So you want your shadows to kind of pop more blue. There we go. Shadow tints are now all very blue. And your highlight tints, we got Black Widow. Let's make the highlight tints. Oh well, that looks awful. So we don't want to do any of that. And you can choose your tint balance. You can balance that out that way. So now we've gone from standard Captain America to this Western Captain America, all through different tones. Like this could be a different style film if you wanted it to, and you can change the style of your film just using lighting and using post-production effects to do so. There's a curve wheel. I don't know a whole lot about working on the lighting curves, but if you get into it, you can really adjust the lighting based on their curves, things like that. People go to school specifically for this. Of course, my degree is in video production and film production, but my specialty was not in lighting and color correction. So I do not do this part as often. I kind of don't work on the curves that much. Same thing with the color wheel. You can use your shadows, midtones, and highlights, and you can just mess around with what you want that to look like. Highlights, midtones, shadows, all that, and do their intensities however you want to. A lot of these things are like the thing I just did here in this, and the color wheel was also something that we did in basic correction, kind of. So there's just different ways to do the same effects, different more advanced features, and things like that. There's vignettes, which will kind of outline, so you can kind of round out that and feather it in and out, create a circular effect going in and out. So yeah, that is the basics of color correction in film production as well. So with that, I think we've covered just about everything. If you have any questions, I would love to open the floor up. This is one of our last film classes that we're doing currently. If you'd like to see more, please let us know. And if you'd like to see more, let us know what you'd like to see more of. Yeah. So I'm going to open up the floor up for questions. While I wait for questions, we're just going to play around with some of these other ones real quick, just to see. So like I want to make this scene, like we're going to play with this one. I want to make this one more, I want to make these shadows even harsher. Let's give him a real outline here. So let's go into creative mode, under looks. Let's see what we got. Noir, that's what we want. Film noir, noir HDR. So that's a real. There we go. 1965. Red wave. So there we go. So we got that noir look. That we want. Do we want faded film? No, let's not do faded film. We can sharpen the image up a little bit. It makes it harsher. Of course, those don't matter as much. Then we'll go into basic correction. That white selector, we're going to select that. That's our true white. Alright, we don't want to adjust the temperature, but we do want, so the exposure. There we go. We're going to contrast up. Now, so this is where with the shadows, we can raise the shadows up a little bit and pull the highlights down. Make these whites go up. Down on the black. So there we go. Now we went from this bluish to this very dark noir look. So once again, another fun thing you can do with color correction. This would be another one that would look really good in noir. Let's you know what? Let's see. There we go. Neutral start. That kind of hits our neutrals. I like that one a lot. We can increase. No, I don't want to increase intensity. 100 was just enough. This is one. We can do faded film to make it look a little older. I like that. Basic correction. We don't have a true white, but what would happen if we? Oh yeah, what would happen if we made that the true white? So yeah, so that took away kind of the stuff they already did. So now because that was a true white thing, but they had already put blue on. So now we've recorrected it back to probably how it looked more originally. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so I think, well, yeah, here we go. There's this one. It's creative. Oh, nope, not that one. That does not look good at all. Clean. Maybe cross HDR. That I like that look. So yeah, there's just so many different fun looks that you can go through here and really mess with. Give it a real. Just give it the look that you want it to look like. Anyways, that's going to conclude this class. I'll answer any questions that you have in the chat, so go ahead and send them over, and thank you for attending.